Hello everyone. Star Trek Strange New Worlds has recast, I shouldn't say recast, they've cast an actor to play the character of Robert April. For those of you whom are not aware, Robert April was the first captain of the original Starship Enterprise. And apparently, um, he's going to be in this new show, and he's one of the ones who helps to bring Pike back to Starfleet. It would seem, just from what I've seen. Um, the character was alluded to, talked about in the writer's Bible for the original series, and was actually seen in an episode of the animated series. And he was an older guy, and he was white. Uh, this the actor that they cast for the character is a person of color, and that's great. Um, and knowing the world as I do, um, I was on Facebook. Yeah, I know. Every form of social media is just it's a, it's a cesspool of bigotry. Some of it is manufactured to promote bigotry, and some of it is just actual ignorance from stupid assholes. But the thing is, there are a few things here. Um, I knew that the racists would have a problem with a formerly white character being portrayed by a person of color. Of course, because they're racists. But the thing is, and I want to talk about how the Star Trek fandom has changed, even from when I was a kid. So, Star Trek has always celebrated diversity. And what are one of the primary components of diversity? Representation. So, Star Trek was one of the first TV shows to have actual representation. Not a great deal of it, of course, but there was a little bit of representation with the intention of promoting this idea that we are um, we are all deserving of respect, and that we all can achieve and should be able to achieve success and happiness and all of that kind of stuff. And because Star Trek promoted these ideas and ideals through representation by casting uh, uh, actors who were people of color and creating characters who were people of color, um, by promoting that, their fan base originally was made up primarily of people who honestly believed that. And if they didn't understand the need for it before, they wouldn't have a problem with it. When it was brought up to them. When I was a kid, none of my friends were saying, "Oh, there's the next captain of on Star Trek is going to be a person of color. Oh, the next captain in Star Trek is going to be cis female." Oh no, we didn't do that. My friends and I, we were the outcasts. We were the people that got bullied and mistreated, and that was a lot of the Star Trek fan base originally. It was made up of those outcasts, and that's one of the reasons that the character Spock was so popular, was because even in the more progressive future of Star Trek, Spock himself was an outcast. It seemed that he was very likely the only alien on board the ship. Now, continuity-wise, they've gone and changed that in the newer shows, but that never made any sense. You know, that Spock was the only non-human character. But it was a perfect allegory for, you know, the struggles that people of color face. You know, misconceptions, uh, misconstruing people's actions, their intent. You know, how they speak, how they carry themselves, all of this stuff. But as Star Trek's popularity grew, so too did its audience. And the number of people whom did not subscribe to uh, the truth that is diversity, because the world is diverse, um, the more, you know, as its popularity grew, you got more racists and bigots who came in who just liked seeing space battles, and they didn't understand nor even like the ideals that Star Trek was putting forth. Which to me is sickening, you know, because for so long you had the Star Trek actors who would go to conventions and they would talk about how intelligent and how understanding and accepting Star Trek fans were, and now we have these assholes whom have come in and are spewing their hatred. You know, for a long time, Star Trek was not really diverse. You may have had one character whom was a person of color. You know, that's not really a lot of diversity. You had no LGBTQ plus characters. Now we do, and we have more people of color and this kind of thing. But the other thing is the sick part and the insidious part. Well, it's all insidious, but one of the most insidious aspects is that they don't come out and say that they have a problem with an actor whom is a person of color portraying a formerly white character. They come out and say things like this, in quotes, quote, "You know, if they had cast a white chick to play Uhura, there would be riots," suggesting that the people whom are fighting for equality and fair treatment for people of color are violent. So let's see here. This is one of the counter statements to that guy's stupidity. "Oh, sorry. You must be having a hard time finding representation of white men in media. Let me help you out. Go watch about 95% of all TV shows and movies ever made." And it's like, yeah. In the United States, the majority of media has not only featured white people, but it's lacked any kind of diversity at all, and you know, including people like me. So it's like, yeah, the original series was all about promoting more progressive ideas. The whole fucking point of having Sulu and Uhura and Chekhov was to show that diversity, to represent it in media, to show that, you know, for humanity to get its shit together, we have to put aside things like racism and transphobia and homophobia. How do we do that? We don't bitch, moan, and complain and make vague racist statements when an actor whom is a person of color is portraying a formerly white character. You know, and that's the thing. The bigots act like if there's a trans woman on television, every child will suddenly become trans. Well, you don't become trans. You're either trans or you're not. You know. Um, I grew up in a society that presented 99.9% cisgender. Transgender people were ostracized and attacked um, and vilified. Seeing all of that didn't make me any less trans. But seeing people like me represented in media would have helped with my own mental health and my own transition. I would have transitioned sooner if such things had been presented as not only as common as they are, but also normal. Because it is normal. Yeah, it's just a white racist who's pissed off because a formerly white character is now being played by a person of color. That's all it is. It's just racism, plain and simple. And the person who commented, who countered that racist dickhead's argument, said, "You're the one upset and complaining. I pointed out that by your words, that representation should be proportional to population. You should be excited about this casting announcement, but we both know you're not trying to make a logic-based argument. You're just blowing a racist dog whistle, hoping some will agree." Newsflash, captain of the junior varsity white supremacist team. White people aren't victims of systemic racism. They are represented in all U.S. media and they are privileged regardless of hard work. That's true. Um, I did not know. I knew it existed. Okay, systemic uh, bigotry. It exists. I've always known it exists. Um, but before I transitioned, obviously I was not a victim of it. But since I mean, I was a victim of it in that, I was shamed into not transitioning sooner. And I was made to feel like, my very existence was um, wrong. But that's bullshit. Um, but yeah, it sickens me to the core that this is what Star Trek fans are now. Used to be where when you were talking about Star Trek, enjoying Star Trek, nobody would say, well, but they have you can't have a woman as a captain, or you can't have a person of color as a captain or a commander or this or that. Nobody was saying that. I mean, I'm sure somewhere some asshole was saying it, and I'm sure somewhere out there some assholes were thinking it, but there wasn't the platform. They didn't feel emboldened to be racist. And sadly, because of right-wing politics in America, they have been so emboldened. And because the number of racists has really, really, really grown, and the number of bigots has really grown, in proportion to, it's directly proportional to the amount of social capital that minorities now have. So the more we're accepted and the more we're allowed to exist, the more bigots you're going to have. Sadly. Um, when everyone's afraid and everyone's marginalized, people they don't have any reason to talk about it because there's no challenge to their perception or to their ignorance. So the fact that that these racist assholes one, exist, and two, feel emboldened to spew their ignorance just pisses me off. And if I had the power of Q, I'd just pop their little fucking empty heads. And I would ensure that they could never procreate. They truly come from the shallow end of the gene pool. So, yeah, I'm reading the comments, and you may say, well, that's just Facebook. No, it's all social media. Social media is a reflection, is a true representation of people. Yeah, you have bots and that kind of thing, but even outside of that, you know, yeah, these idiots who spew this bigotry are so ignorant of the fandom that they now associate themselves with. That, I mean, why are you bitching about Star Trek being progressive? Why are you bitching about Star Trek being diverse? It's always tried to be diverse, with the exception of trans people and gay people. You know, I just, yeah. So this is kind of a microcosm of what's going on in the world today. Why the right wing tried to overthrow the government and all this other stuff. It's all interconnected and all linked, and it's people's privilege and all that kind of stuff. Privilege. The people whom are privileged, that privilege manifests itself in blindness. And so they won't see it. I mean, some people specifically, they're racist and yeah. But the worst is when they themselves don't see it, and when you try to show it to them, they understand how awful they are and that they are privileged, and then they put up their defenses and they will argue with you. And there's no talking to people like that. It becomes rather pointless. So my reaction to Robert April being played by a person of color, great. In my mind, I myself started writing a script. That's my preferred method of writing, is in script form. I just find it easier because I'm a very visual person, and so I visualize things in that way. And I wanted to do I wanted to do a show about the first 5-year mission of the original Starship Enterprise. And the person I wanted to play Robert April was Andre Braugher, whom is a person of color. And to me, he's a great actor, and he could do it. He could bring to it the gravitas, for lack of a better term, that it demanded. So it wasn't necessarily about him being a person of color or not. I really liked him as an actor, and I thought, in my head, this is who I'm going to imagine. But for me, it's like, if they insist, I don't want them to retread characters whom we know really well. We know who Captain Kirk is, and we know them really well. We know who Spock is. Don't go back and rewrite those characters. Go back and explore characters we don't know so well, or create new characters. That said, if they cast if they cast a non-white, or excuse me, if they cast a person of color to play Captain Kirk, I wouldn't have a problem with it. My only issue is, are they, I like the idea, if they're going to go and recast characters and recreate characters, that they do it in a separate continuity, like J.J. Abrams did with his movies. That's a perfectly acceptable way of rebooting Star Trek, in my opinion. I didn't like the movies, but I appreciated that they went to the trouble of doing that. But I mean, Kirk's been played by what, 3 people now? So it's like, yeah, okay, fine. Have a person of color play that character. I don't care. It would be cool if the actors who play that character could integrate part of Shatner's performance into theirs, because it would make it feel more like Kirk, But yeah, or make the character trans, a trans woman. Why not? It doesn't fucking hurt you if you want to think of Captain Kirk as being a straight cisgender white guy. There's plenty of fucking episodes of Star Trek and plenty of fucking movies for you to watch with that version. It's just stupid, and it's just racism, plain and simple. And it pisses me off that this is what Star Trek fandom is at this point. It's full of bigots, Star Wars fandom always had those aspects because Star Wars was so popular. But Star Trek, by comparison, had a smaller, more niche audience, and I think that was helpful, honestly. Now we have to put up with these bigoted assholes in our fandom, and their presence is vomitous. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that and address that myself. The comment, this guy made, oh well, if they recast a non-white character with a white person, there'd be riots. No, there wouldn't. Nobody's rioting because of a fucking character on television. People are rioting because of systemic racism and systemic bigotry. And in that instance, rioting is perfectly acceptable because it's the language of the unheard, as has been said. Anyway, yeah, it's important that we call these bigoted assholes out when they engage in this shit, because it is wrong. There's no room for bigotry in Star Trek fandom. There's no room for there's no room for bigotry in society, period. We need to excise that from society if we truly want to have a brighter future. If you really love Star Trek and you want to see Star Trek realized in real life, then you need to fight bigotry. You need to wipe it off the face of the fucking planet. And casting a person of color is not racist. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching.